Alright guys, today's video is going to be about Classified Striker 6-piece and the build that surrounds that gear set. Now, there are different ways to build the gear set, and originally I did not intend to do separate build videos for the classified sets. However, after building it, after fighting against it many times, I've realized that there are better and worse things to roll, there are different ways to structure it, and after fighting against a lot of them and folding them over like wet napkins in some situations, I've noticed that there are concrete things that I can put in this video that are of value. So without further ado, here we go. For those that aren't aware, Striker has a myriad of bonuses, and I think a lot of people are aware of what those bonuses are because they're here to watch a classified Striker build video, but in case, I'll just go over it now. You have a 2-piece bonus of stability, you have a 3-piece bonus of enemy armor damage, which isn't going to be super useful in PvP, but it's very helpful in PvE. The stability is something we're going to come back to. The 4-piece bonus of every consecutive hit deals 1% more damage and stacks up to 100%. Missing a shot drops the bonus by 2%, and the bonus is reduced by 1% every second. It can be paused by EMP and is lost when exiting combat. Then you have the 5-piece bonus of additional stability and enemy armor damage. Again, we're going to come back to the stability here. It's very important for this build in particular. And then we have the 6-piece bonus of every hit adds a self-healing bonus for 0.02% of max health per second. This bonus is increased by 0.05% for every 3,000 stamina. Stacks up to 100, you miss a shot, it drops the bonus by 1, and it decreases by 2%, 2 stacks per second. Now, they have improved Striker's battle gear as well. They buffed this since the PTS, which for a long time I wasn't aware of. Every hit increases the bonus damage from Striker's battle gear by an additional 1%, meaning you now stack 2% per shot per landed bullet or pellet of a shotgun instead of 1. And missing shots drops the bonus damage by 1%, and the bonus is reduced now by 2% every second. So it's just a way stronger version of the 4-piece. It has a lot of healing, allows you to be a tank, allows you to do huge amounts of damage. This is the highest single source damage boost in the game, up to 100%. So that's what we're going to be taking advantage of with this. And it does allow you to stack increments of 3,000 stamina to become, more tanky. You can heal for more. Now, I do not advise stacking to 9,000 stamina. I've heard a lot of people building 9,000 stamina Striker and then relying on the bonus to get their damage up instead of raw firearms. But my answer to that is that it's the wrong decision. You should not be stacking 9,000 stamina. You should be stacking 6,000 stamina because it still gives competitive healing. There are alternative methods to get additional healing, and then the base firearms raising your weapon damage is doubled when you reach 100% increased weapon damage from Striker, which is very easy to do, especially with certain weapons. So the moral of the story here, before we talk about individual stat points on gear, is stamina at 6,000. Go just barely over 6,000. Any points above 6,000 are going to be wasted for what the build is trying to do in the long run. So as soon as you get over 6,000, put everything else into firearms. That's the proper way to build. Now moving on to individual items, we have our backpack, and there's a little bit of flexibility here. You want health as a major attribute. This boosts the efficiency of one of your gun talents, which I'll talk about in a bit, and it boosts the efficiency of the healing that you get from the 6-piece. For a minor attribute, I've opted for disrupt resistance. You can re-roll this though to ammo capacity. Since I am running 2 of the same type of weapon, which not everyone is going to do, but you can do, I should probably have ammo capacity, but disrupting is one of the hard counters to Striker. So having disrupt resistance on the backpack is a really good call for decreasing that duration and allowing you to jump back in the fight with all of your bonuses much faster. For gloves, I think it's pretty straightforward. I've rolled firearms. You don't necessarily have to have firearms on your gloves as long as you maintain stamina to firearms ratio of about 6,000 stamina and then the rest into firearms. But for major attributes, I have skill haste at 9%. That's very helpful. Assault rifle damage at 12%. That's critical and a huge buff to your damage output overall. And critical hit chance. Now, you can swap out the skill haste for critical hit damage. Some people might tell you to do that. I think the skill haste is going to be more beneficial considering the skills that we do choose to run, though it is interchangeable. I think it's a very good bonus to have though. Next up is the holster. Super straightforward in pretty much every build. The holster, I rolled skill haste here. You can swap that out for health, though it's not very much health. You could also go with reload speed or critical hit chance. This one is entirely based on preference, but skill haste feeds into what the build tries to do very well. And then just look for high main stat rolls, optimize, get as much armor as you can. Pretty straightforward. Next is the chest piece, and this one is straightforward too. You want health and skill haste. I've rolled stamina here to maintain my ratio, but health and skill haste as major attributes is very important. If you are choosing to roll exotic damage resilience, it becomes important to roll it everywhere you possibly can. And Striker doesn't actually benefit from EDR as much, considering the fact that it has a base heal built into the set itself. So you want skill haste that feeds into the whole mechanic. If you do want to swap it out and want to counter Predator's Mark more, you can roll EDR here and then get it in additional locations. But skill haste is the most important thing for this version of the build. And then minor attributes, ammo capacity, you absolutely need at least one piece. If you're trying to replicate this build exactly with all the same weapons and pieces of gear and rolls, then you do need ammo capacity on at least your chest piece or your backpack, or both, because you're going to have 2 assault rifles. Now we have the mask, and there's some flexibility here, but I do believe this to be the optimal way to roll. You have critical hit chance. You can swap that out for something like skill power if you really want to, but critical hit chance is going to add to the damage value. As a minor attribute, you want damage to elites, because this build does absolutely annihilate NPCs. There's no doubt about that, and you're going to be using that to your advantage in the Dark Zone because they are so plentiful. You're going to have a significant advantage whenever you have NPCs in or around the encounter. But the mask has a little bit of flexibility with the major attribute. Last up for gear, we have the knee pads. Now, on the knee pads for a minor attribute, you want to look for disrupt resistance. You might even want to roll it if you can, if you have access to an additional reroll that you don't need to use for something else. Disrupt resistance paired with the backpack equals over 45%, and that is something that helps to counter the counter to your build. So very, very highly advised there. Damage to elites, phenomenal for PvE, feeds into the whole secondary gun aspect, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So that's a great minor to have. And then health as a major attribute, that is very good. It's equivalent roughly to about 500 main stat of stamina. There's nothing better that you can roll as a major there. If you do select EDR everywhere, that's something that's viable for countering one specific Predator's Mark classified build, but it's not something that I advise. Now we move on to weapons, and this is where I've chosen to go a different route than a lot of people, but there is some flexibility and there's alternatives, which I'll also talk about. I have gone with 2 different Bullfrog exotic weapons. On the first, which is my PvP weapon, where I'm fighting other players in the Dark Zone, responsive, unforgiving, and uncomplicated. I don't believe that there's a better combination here. Responsive is an extremely effective talent, has multiplicative damage. Unforgiving, arguably one of the best PvP talents in the game, because everyone does have larger health pools now with the change to stamina. You are going to be proccing that 10% or that 25% pretty routinely, especially in PvP encounters. So responsive, unforgiving, uncomplicated for the PvP weapon. And then for the PvE weapon, my secondary, I've rolled predatory. Now, predatory was buffed by stamina being buffed. Killing a target regenerates 35% health over 20 seconds. Now, we do have a high base health pool because we are rolling over 6,000 stamina, and we do have health in a lot of locations as a primary attribute on gear. So predatory, give or take around roughly, will equate to about 5,500 health per second for 20 seconds when you kill a target with this weapon. So predatory is highly advised on your secondary weapon. It doesn't have to be a bullfrog. It can be an M4. It can be an LVOAC. It doesn't have to be specifically this exotic, but it has to be something with high RPM that is the same weapon type as your primary and has predatory. Very strong. Unforgiving, really good, self-explanatory. It's good in PvE and PvP, but you can roll that off for destructive or ferocious if you're really going full PvE only. I wanted something that I could also use in PvP. If I did happen to have this on instead of my primary, I wouldn't be too badly impacted by that. And then uncomplicated, of course, the intrinsic talent on the bullfrog. Now there are a lot of alternatives, guys. You can run submachine guns with the house. You can run an MP5. You can run an MP7. As I said before, you can run an M4 or an LVOAC. Something with high RPM is going to stack very efficiently and deal a lot of damage. Another alternative that you can use is the Showstopper. I have Unforgiving, Responsive, and the Showstopper intrinsic talent here. This is phenomenal for stacking. It stacks super fast, but it's a little bit harder to control. It's not my favorite weapon in the world, but if you have one, you're welcome to use it. You can build up stacks insanely fast and then switch over to a different gun that has more precise aiming and really take down targets quickly in PvP scenarios. For weapon mods, it's pretty self-explanatory with the Bullfrog, since it is the exotic that I'm using 2 of. I'm going to mod for magazine size, critical hit chance, rate of fire on the magazine, and then critical hit damage and no stability or accuracy anywhere else. Always looking for critical hit damage and critical hit chance. Optimal range is also quite good for extending the range of the Bullfrog, renamed from the FAMAS. But critical hit chance, critical hit damage, everywhere you can possibly get it. Now, it does have low stability and high RPM to begin with, but that is helped, that is drastically improved by the fact that you have two different bonuses of stability on the Striker's gear. You have 10% on the 5-piece, you have 20% on the 2-piece, and that pairs very nicely with this weapon. For mods, I am running stamina with skill haste, but again, that is with the only goal of boosting my stamina up over 6,000 to get the second proc of the 3,000 increment healing bonus given by the 6-piece. So 6,000 stamina, if you already have that, if you've rolled an additional piece of your gear to stamina instead, then you're going to be using, instead of stamina mods, firearms mods, but you want skill haste on all of your different mods because that is very important for the build. For all of my performance mods, I'm going with first aid self-heal, though if you do want to switch this out and you'd rather go for a burst damage style, you can go with pulse critical hit chance, and that will interact with one of the talents that we're running to boost your overall damage output. So personally, for survivability, which works quite well for me and allows me to beat a lot of competitive other builds, I go with first aid self-heal. For skills, I always recommend running booster shot. To me, it's a no-brainer that you would go for something that both increases damage and damage mitigation by significant margins at the cost of just a little bit of healing, because it really takes 2 or 3 shots from any enemy to get through that extra 30,000 healing that you're getting with overdose. It can heal you into your overheal, but at the same time, people have such large base health pools that low skill power builds like this one and many others are never going to really use overdose to get that overheal. They're going to be using it to keep themselves alive, and it has a very long cooldown at 33 seconds. So booster shot has a lower cooldown, only slightly though, not very much, but gives bonus damage, which is very important, and damage mitigation for a long duration, and then also has competitive healing. So booster shot, highly recommended. And then because we are looking for alternative ways to heal ourselves and ways to cleanse things like the Predator Bleed, the Immunizer. A lot of people are using this now because it guarantees 33% of your health bar as healing. So if you have a lot of base health and a lot of stamina, this will still heal 33% of your bar regardless of how large that pool is, and people are dropping it down and instantly blowing it up. It also serves as a second alternative cleanse to the Predator Bleed, which a lot of people are running, and it's very, it's hard hitting when you get dropped by that bleed, and it's not something that a lot of people like. So running an Immunizer, great way to have a third heal in addition to your booster shot and your med kit, as well as have an additional cleanse for different status effects, and a large AoE heal for yourself. For talents, there are different ones that you can run in a group composition, but I'll cover the solo ones first. On the move is great. You're always going to be moving around at least enough to proc this, so damage mitigation by 15% for 10 seconds is invaluable. And then precision. Precision is actually a stronger pulse if you can headshot an enemy for 10 seconds than it is if you were to run the pulse skill. So you're freed up to run something like the support station, have a third heal, and then also have a more powerful pulse than you would had you used the actual pulse skill. This is a very, very potent talent for boosting damage overall, and it's something I highly recommend in both solo and group play. Outside of that, critical save, that's a no-brainer. Everybody should be running this and popping your med kits in the last health segment, and then strike back, because you will be reduced to an amount of health to trigger this quite often in PvP and PvE encounters alike. Now, if you are in a group, then you can switch out triage for on the move, and you can swap out something like combat medic for strike back. But I do recommend running precision unless someone in your group has a super powerful pulse. If they do, if they have a pulse and a tactician build or reclaim or skill power build, then you swap out precision for combat medic and on the move for triage. Looking at our character sheet really quickly, we have damage to elites at 26%, which is super helpful, and enemy armor damage at 37%, because we are going to be relying on proccing both of these two damage number boosts on NPCs, dropping them and getting predatory active, because that's a huge boost to our healing. That's going to allow you to kind of face tank through almost any landmark or situation in the Dark Zone, aside from a couple of players focusing you all at the same time. So enemy armor damage, damage to elites, important values. If we go down to skills, we have 40% skill haste, which means more often we can have our booster shot mitigation and damage activated. So skill haste, very important, and we have a high value there. And for survivability, we have max health of 336,000. You can roll higher. You can build stamina to 9,000, but I feel that you sacrifice far too much damage. So you do have almost 500,000 toughness. With a more optimized build, you would break 500,000 toughness here, barely crossing 6,000 stamina, and you'd have a higher max health pool. And that increases the power of your striker bonus and predatory. Jumping over to some gameplay, I decided to show a bit of a continuous manhunt from the live stream. I didn't go gather extra footage because I felt like this actually served the purpose really well. I'm showing a lot of the different interactions between this build and competitive builds like Nomad or Striker, and its efficiency, some of the usages of the talents like Predatory. But as you can see, I'm using my primary PvP weapon at this point, and I'm solely for the purpose of fighting other players, engaging in some PvP here, kind of near close to a checkpoint at Arch Plaza. The goal is to showcase how the heals work. Using 3 different heals can keep you alive for a longer period of time. Also having the striker bonus, the way to stack it, and, you know, a variety of other things. So players do keep coming through, and I'm not really a talented PvPer. Anyone that in the live stream or any regulars or viewers or subscribers can tell you, one of my token sayings is, in someone's hands who has better aim than I do, this build is far more efficient. That's doubly true of Striker. Someone that can aim better than I can, always have more stacks, keep their reticle on target more frequently, is always going to have a better time while using this gear set. But that being said, I have folded over a lot of different classified Striker builds, and I've found that, you know, the ones running 9,000 stamina to get that extra heal are not able to compete with the damage output. As long as you can stack in a fairly competitive way to them, you can outclass them in the damage category, and you can drop them because of it. You can also drop Predator builds, and you can also drop Nomad builds. One of the sore topics I've heard people talk about is how Nomad players sometimes get 3-4 lives. That's, you know, unfair, that's overpowered. Some people say that. I'm of the mindset that it's sometimes super, super annoying, but it's not necessarily overpowered because you have to fight them a certain way. What you can use, and you'll see this coming up here, you can use is your heals. You can use your immunizer here to cleanse the shock effect from the turret. So what I do is I run up on this player, I drop the immunizer in a certain position, and then it renders his disrupt and his shock useless and allows me to drop him much faster than I think he was prepared for. Another thing is that you'll see me fight a Nomad user coming up soon after that, and it's important to know exactly how to fight them. So here I go, I run up, I drop the immunizer, the shock turret then shocks me but doesn't shock me, his disrupt does nothing, and then I drop him. And when fighting a Nomad user, which will come up in just a minute, you have to drop them down, trigger their Nomad proc, but then you can't actually keep trading with them because they have 60% all damage resilience. Because you not only have 3 different heals in this build, but also the heal over time from both Predatory and from the Striker bonus, if you use it properly, you are able to out-sustain them even though they have those 3 lives. You can pick your encounters, you can drop them, get their health bar to 0, get the proc, leave them for 10 seconds, let them keep running around, try and break line of sight, and then get the kill after that 60% all damage resilience has faded. If you try and face tank a Nomad that has a proc freshly triggered, you will lose pretty much every time. So as you can see here, I'm starting to get low. I'm trading with this guy. I'm taking damage from 2 sides. I win this 2v1 because I switched to my other gun, get the rifle butt while I have Predatory active as a gun talent, and then I get that extra residual healing. Then I move on. I have a bunch of healing from not only Striker, but from Predatory, and I have the 3 heals, medkits, which I run out of, but also booster shot. I have the mitigation. I'm stacking all of these things on top of each other to make Striker, in this instance, what I believe to be the best solo build for both PvP and PvE in the Dark Zone, especially since it is the best place to get gear, classifieds, exotics, etc. You're going to be using the best gear set to be able to contend with players and NPCs alike. And that's what this build is. Have the 2 assault rifles, in this case 2 bullfrogs, switch back and forth. Predatory allows you to face tank through landmarks like it's no problem. Your PvP gun, in this instance for dropping players. And you can really tackle pretty much any other build out there. I kind of shaded around the subject of having non-classified builds be the vast majority of the content on the channel, which they will be. But in this instance, it really is a competitive build. You can build it a certain way, have certain talents, and it's something that is quite strong. So that's going to wrap it up, though. The build is highly efficient. If I had to pick one build that I would say was the best in patch 1.8, I might say this. Then again, I haven't really built all the different iterations of Nomad, having all firearms or all stamina, etc. I don't have every single combination of gun talents on every single exotic yet, but we'll get there. So thank you for watching, guys. This is a great build. Make sure you run it if you get the classified pieces, but I will still pump out non-classified counter builds to the current meta. This is kind of a meta build. But that's it. I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you for watching. Very much appreciated. Check out the links down below. There is a Patreon page. A lot of the videos are getting demonetized, not necessarily because of the division, which is something I talked about a little bit previously, how it's a little bit immune. It's slightly immune to the adpocalypse stuff that went on, but because of some stuff that happened with a giant YouTuber doing some dumb stuff, and now videos are probably going to get demonetized. We're going to hit Adpocalypse 3.0. So if you want to support a different way, please check out the Patreon down below. Also check out the Upper Echelon website with the forums, tons of different topics and games. There's social clubs, etc. Make sure to go there if you want to be integrated with the community more, be a part of that, help us expand it, help us populate it, and help us put content on it. So very much appreciated though. That's it. Have a nice night, guys.